It is another signature event this weekend on the PGA Tour. It is the Arnold Palmer Invitational, and it's not just Scotty Scheffler at the top of the field, but also Xander Schauffele back in our lodge this week off of a rib injury. We're going to break down our thoughts on this week's event, talking about Bay Hill Club and Lodge, intricacies of that course. We'll break down our top bets at FanDuel Sportsbook and the top DFS plays on FanDuel for this week. Welcome on into the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every Tuesday by Brandon Gdula. You can find him on X at Gdula13. He is on Blue Sky at Gdula. Check out his work at FanDuel Research, where he is a senior managing editor. Brandon, pretty fun field for this week. How you doing today?
Yeah, fun field, fun course. Not just Scotty ran away with it last year, but the last 4 years it was a one-shot winner. Scores aren't like 25 under, which I always like when golf looks a little tough for these guys who are so good. So yeah, I'm excited. Where I thought you were going was it's not just Scotty at the top, but I'm glad you shouted out Xander. I thought you were going to say Rory because Rory's playing great golf.
Yeah, but Rory's been around. We haven't seen Xander since January, and I've missed it.
Well, that's because you don't watch the TGL. New York sneaking in the playoffs. Love to see that for Xander. Rory, they got bounced Boston Commons, so he's got something to play for.
I'm sure that's his only motivation this week. Is man, couldn't make the TGL playoffs. I gotta bounce back some. Is that gonna ruin his psyche? Are we sure it's not gonna go the other way here?
I mean, look, we don't know. We're in uncharted territories with the TGL narratives here. Boston just scored just 1 point all year, which is kind of a tough scene. Outscored by Jupiter Lynx, who has two guys well outside the top. Kisner's 880 in the official World Golf rankings. Tiger's outside the I think he's 1200 something, and they just could not get up and down. It was kind of crazy. It was quite the narrative for all the TGL heads out there. I know they know what I'm talking about, but maybe next year, Jim, or it's not too late. I guess there's playoffs still. So, but honestly, in a more serious note, we are kind of entering that, the Players is not a major, I know, but yeah, we're entering that season of where guys want to peak, and this is about where it's going to start to matter more than any other time. And for Rory, that's super pressing, but Scotty's got a little competition this year. We've got 4 or 5 names in great form, some sort of borderline studs like a Justin Thomas right now rounding into form. So I think we're set up for a great few weeks of golf here.
I will say the TGL has had some sort of value to me this week, because I was messaging you about Xander yesterday saying, hey, I can get him at 24. That's pretty long. I'm a little worried about this rib injury. And you messaged me back. He's playing in TGL right now, dork. You didn't say dork, but I felt it. I felt it come across in the intonation of the Slack. And so I bet Xander because of that. So if there is no value other than I get to root for Xander this week, then at least TGL has done something for me.
Well, I haven't seen that match yet. It was Monday night, so Raw took precedent. So I didn't see every swing of his. I saw a couple. He seemed fine. So if there was something underlying, that's on me. But
if he's doubled over in pain in the back nine, I expect you to refund my bet.
I watched his last hole, and he seemed to be fine on his drive approach. So that's all I needed.
No shaking out the rib injury, not doing little shimmies to make sure things are good there.
Not that I noticed.
Okay.
But again, he's back. I never thought he'd be 18-1 again at this rate. Colin Morikawa's knocking on that door. Justin Thomas kind of looks like his old self, but.
Yes.
Then again, you got Scotty and Rory looking kind of unbeatable as a duo. So, a lot of ways to go this week, Jim.
A lot of ways to go indeed. We'll break down all those ways throughout the show for today, talking about our top bets and our top DFS plays for the Arnold Palmer Invitational in just a second. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel Research Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcast, with you every Tuesday, breaking down our top bets and DFS plays in the PGA. So to get those as they are posted, go to FanDuel Research Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe, and if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating and review as well. And of course, these shows do go live on the FanDuel Golf Betting YouTube page, a brand new YouTube page for us over there. If you want some shorts, some clips in this video, breaking down our bets that we like and stuff like that, go to the FanDuel Golf Betting YouTube page, subscribe there to watch the video version of these shows as well. March is here, Brandon, and college basketball is reaching its most exciting stretch of the season right now. New customers on FanDuel get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. It's $150 to bet on everything from conference clashes to tournament upsets, and even who is cutting down the nets. If you've been waiting to join FanDuel, there is no better time. The app is easy to use, and when you win, you'll get paid instantly. So visit FanDuel to get in on the college hoops action before March Madness. I don't know if I can say that. Before March takes over. It's already March. I don't know. I was trying to rephrase it to figure out a way to make it work. Before March takes over in its fullest form. Mid-March takes over. We'll go with that. Anyway, must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, for 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is there. Visit gamblinghelpline.ma.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's take a look here at Bay Hill Club and Lodge, the host of this year's Arnold Palmer Invitational. It is 7,466 yards and a par 72. There are 72 golfers in the field, and there is a cut for this year's event, despite the fact it is a 72 golfer field. The top 50 plus ties or golfers within 10 strokes of the lead after 2 rounds will make the cut. So the 10-stroke rule is in play for this week. Otherwise, top 50 plus ties do make the cut after those first 2 rounds. So you can get a bit more top heavy because we'll still see a large percentage of the field make the cut, but very much worth noting that you are not guaranteed to get 72 holes out of all your golfers for this week. Brandon, what should people know about this week's course?
Yeah, I mean, long-standing course, Bay Hill, par 72, a bit long. As you mentioned, over 7,400 yards. In terms of the fairway width, kind of average, but that doesn't necessarily tell the whole story because there's water in play on, I think, 9 holes. 9 holes, and you're probably going to see some penalties. You're going to see some water balls, some reloads, and that's going to take you kind of, not necessarily one penalty is going to take you out of contention exactly, but with winning scores being pretty realistic here, not a ton of birdie chances. Recent winning scores have been 15 under, 9 under, 5 under, 11 and 4. And that 15 under, as I mentioned already, was a 5-shot win for Scotty Scheffler. So kind of reduce that. You're looking more at a historical winning score of around 7 or 8 under, and typically a pretty with like fewer birdies. You tend to see a little bit of a tighter finish, with 4 straight before last year being decided by a single stroke. But kind of going back in more towards the actual course information, pretty large Bermuda greens this week. That doesn't mean, I talk sometimes about how larger greens do statistically and mathematically mean that you can de-emphasize approach a little bit, but I don't think that that's the right angle for this week, because the recent winners here who have been over the last 5, Scotty Scheffler twice, Kurt Kitayama, Bryson DeChambeau, and Tyrrell Hatton. Those are basically big names, tee to green, whose putters are, I mean, for Kitayama, it's not good, but I'm going to say like great tee to green golfers who can putt And Kitayama, I think, was second in putting for his win. But basically what you're looking for is that tee to green game to be there, because it's going to be pretty relentless from start to finish. Kitayama during his win was 14th in strokes gained tee to green. Those other 4 names were 8th or better. So it's not just like, hey, all you got to do is hit it far. There's more to it than that with how interesting and difficult this course is. You kind of have to be a great overall golfer. But for the key stats, if you want to get a little bit more granular, what I'm prioritizing is strokes gained approach is always number 1. When strokes gained off the tee with an emphasis on driving distance, not accuracy. Little bit of Bermuda putting strokes gained, or just putting strokes gained in general. And if you're like looking at proximity splits, it's going to be those longer approaches. Again, longer course, a little bit of not like forced layups specifically, but pulling up and making sure you're not just in these fairway bunkers or dealing with a lot of that water that comes into play. You're going to have longer approaches. So proximity from 200 plus, which again, you can find on PGA Tour or Data Golf. They have an approach skill tool, bunch of cool stuff there. So what I'm looking for is good ball strikers this week for the most part.
Now, you talked about green size as it relates to approach play, and that's kind of the main thing. You know, if it's a small green, you got to stick it, and that's tough to do. Does it impact the way you view around the green play? Because larger greens this week, if you look at Data Golf's course fit tool, around the green play doesn't really grade out as being as important as it usually is. And it's not something we emphasize a ton to begin with. But I wanted to ask, are you more comfortable with golfers who may not have the best wedges this week in comparison to other weeks, whether it be because of the green size or not?
So, like, that's one of those where it can go different ways because there's layers to this. This is a hard course. So scrambling to save par is important, not turning, being short-sighted into bogey or worse does require good around the green play. But if there's one of the 4 stats this week that matters least, it is pretty clearly strokes gained around the green. And that doesn't mean that I'm going out of my way to look for golfers who are bad there, thinking that it matters so little that we're basically getting a free square. It's not really that. It's that there's so much emphasis on being long off the tee and / being accurate enough off the tee where you don't put yourself in trouble, which is why strokes gained off the tee is just a better stat than distance or accuracy by itself. But if you are not able to hit these larger greens and you're scrambling, you're going to miss out on the potential scoring chances that do exist, and you're just going to be putting yourself into bad position. So honestly, what I'm saying applies almost every week on tour, but around the green play, it's the lowest ceiling in terms of what you can gain in a particular week. You got to chip in a bunch. We do have, speaking of chipping in and TGL, we'll talk about Dr. Chipinski here in a little bit, but for the most part, I'm okay to sort of ignore that around the green, because you do see a little bit of a weak emphasis on the green size and around the green historically.
Yeah, that's applicable to this course, but then also, like you said, or you've said in the past, being wary of golfers who have had good scores recently because of what they do around the greens, that's a spot where we could see regression too. So another area to consider it there for sure. Okay, let's take a look at golfers who have done well here in the past. And when we look at that list, Brandon, kind of got to start at the top of the odds board here. Scotty Scheffler, of course, the defending champion. He also won here back in 2023. He is plus 320 to win this week. Rory McIlroy plus 750, and a fall off all the way down to Ludwig Aubert, who is 16-1. So who are the course horses for you at Bay Hill?
I love Scotty, but it's always kind of nice when he's not around to have a number like that.
Because you can make him be not around in the betting markets by betting the winner without Scotty Scheffler. So you have routes.
That is very true. But yeah, you mentioned the 2 wins. So what I do is I look up the last 5 years of form at a particular course. Don't want to dig beyond that too much, but when you do that, obviously Scotty Scheffler is number 1 with those 2 wins and a 4th in between those, with a 15th in his other start. at Bay Hill, and his recent form is great. He's come back from that hand injury just fine. But Rory McIlroy's second, and that kind of helps explain with their form right now being great and playing well here. It explains why they are standing out as favorites. He's been 21st, 2nd, 13th, 10th, and 5th over his last 5 years. But then you have two names who, well, I guess let me do this. Kind of 4 names in a row, 5 even, of like their form's not really there, but they're names that we've liked in the past a lot. First being Sungjae Im, who has been top 25 in 5 straight here. But in terms of his recent form, 2 straight missed cuts. Did see a spike back with the irons at the Cognizant Classic for the first time in 4 starts. Sungjae does always kind of strike me as a when the fit is there for him, he's a little more lethal. But in terms of the salary, it's still elevated at 10-6 on FanDuel, 45-1 to win outright. I don't know if I see enough there. Same for Max Homa, unfortunately. 8th, 14th, 17th, 10th, and 24th. 2 straight missed cuts, and the irons are really abysmal right now. His best per round mark in strokes gained approach, adjusted for field strength, according to Data Golf, over this 4 event sample is a minus 1.19. So he's got the TGL bounce back narrative with Jupiter Links as well, but I don't know that I'm going to go there just because he's played well at Bay Hill in his career. Something seems a bit off with Homa. Would love to see him turn it around because he's so easy to root for. Corey Connors, mid-level salary, 9,600, 18th, 21st, 11th, 3rd, and a missed cut before that. But really up and down form. The putter's kind of hot and cold. You want Corey Connors with a hot putter. You don't want Corey Connors with a cold putter because it can be really bad. So there is some risk there. Matt Fitzpatrick missed the cut here last year, but other than that, 14th, 9th, 10th, and 9th. Really like middling 2025 campaign for him. 24th at Century, 48th at Pebble, missed the cut in Phoenix, 49th at Genesis. I kind of boxed myself into a corner here, I guess, because you could probably largely say that these guys are in iffy or just okay form the rest of the way. But quickly rattling off the bottom 3 here. Harris English has been 21st, 2nd, 26th, and 9th. Did win the Farmers, but, the form's just whatever outside of that. Keegan Bradley, 4 straight top 36s with 3 top 11s in there. Was 15th at Century, Sony and Farmers, 65th at Pebble, T34 at Genesis. The irons are solid. Another member of Boston Common who might have a little chip on the shoulder. And then Victor Hovland. Like, the ball striking is pretty fine for Hovland right now. Short game is as bad as ever for the most part, but he's played well here, had a runner-up 3 years ago. So when I started building this list, I was like, oh, it's Scotty, it's Rory. But what ultimately kind of jumps out here is there's volatility at this course. You see guys with great finishes, but some missed cuts sprinkled in. And with that being the case, maybe you could spin that as, we'll just play the guys who have figured this out, even if their form right now isn't great. I don't like to do that. If your form right now is terrible, I'm not that interested. But any names here that jump out to you that you want to dig into more?
Well, I kind of want to ask you that because honestly, the answer was no. There was no one there on that like course history list where I was like, yes, I want to go here. I think that in each range where you focused on someone, whether it was Sungjae Im or like in the value range with Max Homa, there was someone else I wanted more around there. So personally, I'm not really willing to gamble on the guys without the elite form. If it's going to be a volatile course, I'd rather just bet on the guys with the better form. And I guess it's kind of where I settle in on it. So was there anyone there who you thought was deserving of speculative rostering, speculative bets on the hope that the course history can unlock better form than what they've shown recently?
Also kind of no.
Yeah.
In a lot
I
of
think
ways.
That's right, honestly.
Yeah. And we we're probably a little too nitpicky when it comes
Sure.
to, hey, this guy's played well here 5 straight years. He's an okay golfer, forms
Yeah.
whatever. But, this just the course, he's comfortable here, everything. We got some big hitters to deal with this week.
But there's
Whether
also
it's
good
DFS,
names in every tier. That to me is the big thing. Yeah, because it's like that. There's a trickle down effect of having the big names up top.
yeah. So I don't feel like I need to chase. Would I be surprised if Sungjae plays well? Not really.
No, it's fine.
But if I'm also being objective, he's not been very good lately.
Would I be surprised if he won? Yes. So versus would I be surprised if Justin Thomas won, who is in the same range as Sungjae from an odds perspective and a DFS perspective? Not really. So I guess that's kind of the way that I view it, is it's a sliding scale, and no one there is I'd rather use them over other guys in that range, because I think to me, there are really fun names in every tier this week.
Yeah, I think that's the case. But then also you get to the names that lead this next section in current form. And then maybe we just take a step back and say, wait, how much credence do we need to give to these two names? So maybe we kind of move into that and have that conversation.
All right. Give it to me.
So over the last 3 months, according to Data Golf and their true strokes gained per round metric, which adjusts for field strength, the best golfers are Scotty Scheffler, who's averaging 3.18 true strokes gained per round in that 3-month sample, which is really disgusting. And
it's prime Scotty. And I mean that in the most complimentary way.
That's basically where he's been at his peak. And then you have Rory at a plus 2.84, which in and of itself is such a mind-boggling thing to wrap your head around, that's still 3.18. I wish I could do math better.
34 or 0.34, 16 plus 18, right? I've had to do a lot of math from turning broad jumps into inches the past couple of days. So
it's that time of year where I can never remember. If the worst is because 72 inches is 6 feet, but
if you have a 6 foot broad jump, I don't need to consider you. So that's lucky. But the issue that I have is 8 times 12 being 96. Just it really hurts me.
But if you're 6'1", it's 73, not 71.
I'm not converting height. I don't care about height.
I know, but
it's all about weight, brother. Get them gains up.
I am, though. I guess it's all about Jim.
Yeah.
So anyway, 0.3.
If you're a 5'8", 230-pound receiver, respect, man. I'm good. I don't care what your height is at that point.
Who said that? I'm saying even when it's 6'4", I still got to do the math.
I feel a 5'8", 230-pound receiver is a John Boy's
where are you getting
breaking
these numbers from?
I made it up. It's Ashton Genty's 5'8", but he's 2'11", 215 or something like that. But I feel a team of 5'8", 230-pound receivers is either the old school Arizona Cardinals when Cliff Kingsbury was there, or a John Boy's Breaking Madden experiment of some kind.
Anyway, 0.34 strokes per round for Scotty over a peaking Rory is disgusting to think about. Not that golf works this way, but if everyone played to their baseline, he'd win by 1.4 shots over Rory over those 4 rounds, which is just it's incredible to think about. But we have Scotty and Rory again, 3.18 per round, 2.84, then a dip of a little bit to Colin Morikawa at a 2.65, Justin Thomas at a 2.36, and then Hideki at a 2.01. Now, what we always do in this section is look at the lower salaried names, but I do think it's worth pausing here and saying, look, Scotty and Rory play well here. They are by far the best golfers in this field. They are by far the favorites. But as a result, you have, I guess I'll say, as a result, this week, not always, you kind of have some names that are really interesting at longer numbers. Xander at 18, Morikawa 22. We'll talk JT as well, but how scared should we be that just Scotty or Rory go out and win?
Pretty scared. And I guess that it's important to account for that
Yeah.
when you're betting. Because you see the number and it's like, oh my gosh, like Hideki at 28, that's insane. And your eyes kind of light up and you have to remind yourself that if we take like there's things like Holden accounts, like you can't take the numbers as gospel, but
Yeah.
Scotty's implied odds right now are 23.8% and Rory's are 11.8%. So like they're adding up for like 35% odds to win if we assume there is no hold, which there is hold. So it's important to account for that. And I still think that you can ask yourself, like, okay, can they beat both Rory and Scotty, who are in like peak form right now? You can say yes to that and still recommend and like outrights. And I think that, I mean, I've had 4 this week so far, which is the high end for me. So like you can still say yes to that, but every time you're placing an outright, you have to ask that question because it's something that like plays a pretty big role in the way you view betting odds this week.
Yeah, it's just, I think, worth taking a little bit of pause and pointing out neither of us are there. My model says they're both a little overvalued at those numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Scotty's not automatically overvalued at plus 320. We've seen that in the past. This week, I think that's the case. Same for Rory. But what you're getting then is sort of that like second tier with the Morikawa. I mean, I've been there for how long? He hasn't converted it. But so this feels like a great week to jump in.
Yeah.
Xander, I don't even know the last time he would have been 18-1. So we do have that going on, but I wanted to pause there. I think we're on the same page. We'll talk about our favorite bets, but let's jump back into this current form discussion and see, this is mostly helpful from a DFS standpoint, but not exclusively. To simplify it, I look at golfers on this 3-month list, again, from Data Golf's true strokes gained per round, whose salary on FanDuel this week is under 10,000 to see what stands out. A couple interesting names. Sepp Straka, salary's 9,600. He won the American Express, T7 at Pebble, 15th in Phoenix. Did miss the cut at Genesis, but bounced back with the T11 at the Cognizant. Irons are great right now for him. Form at Bay Hill has not been good. 4 missed cuts and 5 starts, but he's also really golfing in his peak. Your guy Shane Lowry, shout out to the Bay. They've been fun for TGL, showing up in Bay Area sports apparel, which is nice to see. But second at Pebble, 39th at Genesis, 11th at the Cognizant Classic. Was third here last year after a 67th, but had 4 missed cuts otherwise at Bay Hill. JJ Spawn does kind of hit here, but T2 at the Cognizant Classic, T3 at Sony. Irons are really good right now. Salary's only 8,800. Hasn't played Bay Hill particularly well, but it's kind of accounted for in the salary. Lower than that even is Nick Taylor at 8,300. He won the Sony, has been T33 or better in 4 straight with positive irons and putting in all of those. Way more accurate than he is long off the tee. T12 here last year, four made cuts and 7 starts. So kind of build a worse value play for sure than Nick Taylor with all those numbers in his favor. But we got Daniel Berger, who we talked about kind of a bit recently. Looked pretty good. Form's way up. Second in Phoenix, 12th at Genesis, 25th at the Cognizant Classic. He's at a 1.45 true strokes gained per round in this span. Akshay Bhatia at a 1.42. He's been 9th in 2 straight starts. Always putts well. Has not played Bay Hill. Salary's only 9,400 though. And then kind of in the low tier from a value standpoint is Cam Davis. 8,100 is the salary. He's still at a 1.41 true strokes gained per round in this sample. Did miss the cut at the Genesis and Sony, but 18th or better in his other 3 starts in 2025. 18th at Bay Hill last year after 3 missed cuts to start his career at Bay Hill. But also 2 more names, just because I think any value we can get who's in good form, we want to discuss, because we want Scotty, we want Rory, Morikawa, Xander, etc. Minwoo Lee, 9,200 is the salary, 1.38 true strokes gained per round in this sample. Dr. Chapinski himself made a lot of house calls on the TGL. Top 35 in 13 of his last 15 starts dating back to the Olympics. T44 last year after 2 missed cuts at Bay Hill to start his career. And then your boy, Michael Kim, 1.32 rounding out this list. 9,200 is the salary. Second in Phoenix, 13th at both the Genesis and Mexico Open, and 6th at the Cognizant Classic. He has been a plus. If you look at things like from a grid standpoint, there's 4 strokes gained stats. In that 4-event sample, he's been a positive in 15 of 16 of those opportunities. And I think his only down week was very, very slightly off the tee. So a lot of names to talk about. And the reason I kind of went long here is I'd rather look at these names than the names of the guys we just talked about whose form is pretty bad, but who have happened to play well at Bay Hill in the past. So who jumps out here?
Yeah, I want to talk about the mid-range for DFS for this week because it's really, really good. In that range, you discussed Shane Lowry as being a guy who has good form of late. His salary, $9,800. You mentioned Daniel Berger, $297, golfing really well. Also in this range, you have Russell Henley, 97. Sepp Straka, 96, who's in the current form section. My guy, Taylor Pendrith, at 95. So you've got a lot of guys in this range who I think are aggressively fun. Was there anyone who stood out to you? Because, like, to me, I like Lowry and Henley a lot, but I'm also like second guessing, like, okay, am I overlooking Berger and Straka because of my infatuation with Lowry and Henley? Should I give more focus to those guys? What's your view of this? I think very, very good range.
Yeah, I like Henley a lot. He's at a 1.18 in this span, so just kind of missed the cutoff, but definitely not like he's in bad form by any means. He's someone I think we'll both talk about throughout the show.
Yes.
So he's kind of my preference here. No real issues with Lowry. Just wish the putting was a little more consistent / better. But I'm coming around a lot to Daniel Berger in what is potentially, I don't want to put this on Daniel Berger or anything, but it's potentially like the lowest we'll see him for a while.
Sure.
Also got the Florida narrative this week. So I would love to see Daniel Berger really make a push and a run here this week. So the biggest problem, though, is if you want to get to Scotty or Rory in DFS, it's really hard to get multiple names in that tier. Even if it's Justin Thomas, for anybody who's watching, Jim's starting off a lineup with Scotty Scheffler and Justin Thomas. You're down to 89.75 for 4 golfers on average. It gets tight. So you're going to have to kind of make that decision of where you, like, how top heavy you want to get. And then from there, how many value plays you're willing to plug in at the end of your bench in a way. Not that those guys, like, you need those guys to be able to win.
Yeah.
But realistically, like, there's a cut, but even golfers who make the cut are still at risk of bad scores. Like, I think Jake Knapp, Sepp Straka, speaking of Straka, finished 12 over. They made the cut, but were 12 over. Luke List, 10 over. JT Poston, 8 over last year. So, like, you're not guaranteed a ton of points just by getting a 6 out of 6 through. And if you find golfers who are like bottom 10, you ain't having a good week. So that level of balance is something you really need to ask yourself.
Yeah. I'm willing to dip into the low 8,000 range, maybe upper 7 range in order to get to Scotty. I think that's worth it. I have 3 guys in here right now. Scotty Scheffler, 13.2, Justin Thomas, 10.9. I think that he's undervalued at 10.9. And then Nick Taylor's probably my preferred low-end value play at 83. You talked about him, I think, in the current form section as being a guy you liked. I like him too. But put those 3 in, I've got $9,200 left per golfer, which is thin for 3 golfers. If I take out Scotty, put in Rory, that's $9,400 left. So I could probably get 2 guys in this range. But if I jump down to Xander, that becomes $95.67. If I jump down even more to Colin Morikawa at 11.4, it's $9,800. So Scotty, although always worth his salary, it does change your roster construction and does limit your ability to live in what I think is a very, very good range this week. I still think Scotty is worth it and a guy I'd like to get to, but less committed to that than usual just because it does really alter your approach and does hinder your ability to get into what I think is a really, really good range for this week.
Yeah, you're basically in that sense asking, does Scotty win 3 out of 4 here?
Mm-hmm.
Make that assumption. if you think Scotty doesn't, it's not that you can't build the lineup where Scotty's in it and you know, have a top 1% lineup with Scotty in there not winning, but your chances of doing that get really difficult because you're asking a lot. You're asking to hit on the value guys, and it's probably easier in a sense of like asking Colin Morikawa to finish 10th and have some salary savings where you like go up to Daniel Berger compared to like a Max Grazerman or something like that. So it's really a game theory centric week, and you only you as you're building each lineup can say, here's how I think it. I think this is really like a here's how I think this goes.
Yeah.
If it's one of those top two guys winning, that matters. That's totally viable. But again, bad scores are looming for some golfers. Just because guys are going to make the cut, don't get too careless with who's at the end of your lineup.
Yep, I think that is an important note every week, but also for this week. Weather for this week, it's going to be pretty windy early on Thursday, and then the wind will decrease during the day, but it also will not get under 10 miles per hour. So the range there is between like 16 miles per hour at its peak, which will be around 10 or 11 a.m. on Thursday, down to around 10 miles per hour as the final guys are getting to 18 on Thursday. So worst wind will be Thursday morning. The wind will be lower the rest of the weekend. We could get thunderstorms Sunday potentially down there, but with less wind. So I think that this would give an edge to golfers with later tee times Thursday. Is it a big enough edge where I'm like bailing on guys with early tee times? No, but I think it is worth at least considering that tee times do favor a bit guys with later tee times Thursday in order to avoid the worst of the wind there. Let's dig in now to the betting odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook and lay out our favorite bets for this week. Brandon, as mentioned, we need guys who can overcome Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy for this week. So as far as outrights, who do you think is capable of doing that this week?
I think that so here's kind of my issue. There's three names that I'm drawn to. Something tells me I'm going to pick wrong, but I'm willing to pick two in this range. Those names are Xander Schauffele, who, again, coming back from a rib injury, but is as good as anybody when he's on. However, I do see slightly more value and very similar long-term trends now with Colin Morikawa at 22-1. So I'm going to overlook Xander here in this tier, and I'm going to start my card with Colin Morikawa, again, 22-1 right now to win on FanDuel Sportsbook, but this one really does feel, I probably say this a lot when there's a good event, and it maybe doesn't always happen, but with how good Scotty is right now, how good Rory is, like Ludwig is at times going to look unbeatable. Xander, we know, is one of the best golfers on the planet and is a little bit overlooked right now due to what he's going through. But Colin Morikawa is nearly every bit as good as those guys, and he just hasn't put it all together in a week in quite some time. But he's finished second at the Century, 17th at Pebble, 17th at the Genesis Invitational in his 3 starts in 2025. Yes, I know that's 3 starts, and yes, I kind of turned the TGL into a little bit of a bit, but he's been playing TGL. It's not like he's not getting some reps in, and frankly, I think that this, I don't know, I'm kind of a believer in Morikawa needing to sort of play free and loose, because when he does, he looks like amazing. Sometimes it's just my perception. He can feel a little tight and like put pressure on himself. Fitness probably got to help in some form or fashion to sort of loosen you up a bit. Now, the biggest knock for Morikawa is the Bay Hill form's not great. 64th, 9th cut for him in recent years, but also hasn't putted well here, and that's kind of the main thing. However, Morikawa is a good putter. I think he still has that narrative around him that he's not a good putter, but since the start of last season on the PGA Tour, he's an 83rd percentile putter from within 15 feet, so he's making a lot of the makeable putts. He's a plus Bermuda putter over the last 2 years as well, and we know that yeah, he's not the longest off the tee, but you want precision and you want someone who can go out and kind of win a tough tournament. To me, that's Colin Morikawa. So Morikawa is where I'm going to start with, even at the behest of my guy Xander.
Yeah, I think that's proper. And I like Morikawa a lot this week. Only objection that I have to him, and part of the reason why he was not among the four names that I had mentioned that I bet earlier, was because in the betting markets, he's pretty close to Xander. In DFS, there's a lot bigger gap between those two guys. So to me, I'd rather get my financial exposure to Morikawa via DFS. Now, a lot of you listening to this probably are not doing both, which is fair. So like, I think you could easily defend betting Morikawa 22. For me personally, I'm going to be doing both. So it allows me to pick and choose. And for me, I'd rather play Morikawa in DFS, where his salary is lower at 11.4 versus Xander's at 12.1 versus betting him. But like, I think just straight up ignoring the DFS side of things, yes, Morikawa is a good bet at 22.
Yeah. I prefer Morikawa to Xander in DFS due to the salary, but I think you kind of illustrated my point where it does feel like there's a big gap between Xander and Morikawa. Morikawa has closed that gap pretty quietly, and I don't think he's getting that level of respect. Maybe he is because the betting market has it pretty close between the two of them. But honestly, Morikawa is, again, a lot. It's not that he's better than people kind of realize, but I mentioned, we talked about the last 3 months in terms of form. He's third. He's at a 2.65 strokes gained per round, trailing just Rory and Scotty. He has what it takes to get it done. So, again, there were 3 names that I was really considering. Didn't want to get all 3 because their odds are pretty tight together here with Xander and Morikawa. But if I go with Morikawa, I can still get to that third name. And that for me this week is Justin Thomas at 28-1. Justin Thomas it's like a same but different situation, I think, with Morikawa, where Morikawa's making runs, looking great, didn't kind of convert. JT, kind of the same. Like, we talked about him last summer and fall and everything. And right now it feels like he's like, he's back, but whatever. Like, we got Ludwig, we got Rory, whatever. JT's kind of a little bit overlooked, I think. He's 6th in the field in strokes gained per round over his last 50, and he's 4th over his last 20. He's gained strokes with approach play in 11 straight starts, and the putting is starting to tick upward a bit. I mentioned some concerns with Morikawa with his putter. I have more with JT, honestly, just due to long-term splits, but he also was out of sorts in a lot of different ways. The putting is starting to stabilize a little bit. 28-1 for Justin Thomas definitely checks out for me. I wouldn't fault anyone for preferring Xander to those 2 names. Again, it's super close for me, but chips in, time to record, settle everything. I'm going Morikawa and JT.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. You got Morikawa 22, JT 28. I will also go with Justin Thomas 28-1 to win this week. Let me just read off to you his finishes since the Tour Championship last year, starting at the Zozo. 2nd, 3rd, 26th, 2nd, 48th, 6th, and 9th. And yet his odds are 28-1, which I understand because there is Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy in this field. So like there are big names here, Xander's back and stuff like that. But it kind of feels like we got bored of betting on the comeback for Justin Thomas. But I think the gains are still there. He's getting at least 1 stroke on approach per round in 7 of the past 10 events. He's gained at least 0.3 in all 10 of those. So not even cherry picking. Past 10, he's 10 of 10 at 0.3 or higher. The off the tee play has not been perfect, but has been good. Putter has been, like you said, a bit better recently. History at Bay Hill is not bad. 12th last year, 21st the year before that, while not being in elite form back then. But I do think that Justin Thomas is in elite form right now. He ranks 3rd in Data Golf's true strokes gained across the past 6 months. It's a pretty long sample. JT winds up being number 3 on that list. So getting him here 28-1, that to me says we should still be on a Justin Thomas despite the fact we've been here quite a bit. Hasn't paid off yet. I do think it will pay off in the pretty near future. So to me, Thomas is my favorite outright to win for this week. Also, I will say FanDuel's being pretty generous to you at 28 relative to other sports books right now. So if you're price shopping, you're probably going to wind up here as well. JT 28-1, I think, is a really good bet. So we're both on JT 28 this week. I feel like we've both been on JT and Morikawa a bunch recently, but the reasons we were there have not gone away.
Yeah, that's basically what it comes down to, is like there's a little bit of fatigue sometimes where I think we both, we're about to talk about somebody else who might be a little bit of like, okay, this guy again, but I think it tracks. And it's Russell Henley, who is kind of like historically JT light. But yeah, like there's a matter of golf, in my opinion, golf, and I'll call it just golf analysis. Long-term samples matter, and long-term samples don't go away after 2 weeks of being there. The numbers change, the betting odds change. If JT was 18, it'd be a different story. He's not. He's 28, and that long-term data says that he's a value to me at 28-1. So that's a big part of it. But that leads me right into a name that we've talked about a ton lately. Almost kind of, he was in the mix last week, but it's Russell Henley. I like Russell Henley. I will go so far as to say top 10 at plus 360. I definitely am going to be there at 44-1 as an outright, because I do think that he can get this thing done. The biggest issue for Henley this week is that he's not super long off the tee. However, he's never been long off the tee, and he's been able to contend at tougher courses, longer courses. I think like difficult golf, I wish I should probably start tracking this stuff a little bit better, but Henley at difficult courses feels like he's a better golfer than he is at like birdie fests. Maybe that's not accurate, but it does feel that way. Finished sixth last week at the Cognizant Classic, which was his third top 10 in 5 starts in 2025. He is super solid with his irons and putting. He's gained an approach in 17 of his last 18, and in putting in 19 of his last 21 at this point. That's basically like, we don't talk floor. There's no real thing such as floor in golf, but if you wanted 2 stats that say like these are going to be there, you want approach and you want putting, off the tee is great, and that is like more reliable week to week. But you really want those numbers to be there. Only 6 golfers in the field are top 35 in all 4 strokes gained areas over their last 50 rounds. Scotty Scheffler, Xander, Morikawa, Hideki Matsuyama, Patrick Cantlay, and Russell Henley. So for me, Henley has what it takes this week to get it done, and I know I'm not alone in that.
You very much are not. I love Henley too. I mentioned before I've made 4 outright bets this week. Henley is one of them. 44-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook. I think the top 10 is a better bet just because of the gravity that Scotty and Rory have and the other guys we like. But even at plus 360 for a top 10, I think it makes a lot of sense because, yeah, we bet him a lot, but like it pays off. He's finished top 10 in 10 of his past 25 events, and a lot of those have been in tougher fields like this one. He finished 4th in this event last year. Again, that was a signature event. Finished 4th there. He was 13th back in 2022. Irons are elite. He's a good putter. He's not bad off the tee. Like, accuracy does matter here too. Obviously not going to gain distance like you said, but I think he's got enough to get the job done. So again, I would consider the outright, but preferred bet is the top 10 at plus 360 because Henley is just, I think he's kind of too good to be that long.
He's a great golfer. I get it. He's not the flashiest or anything, but it's a good number for him this week.
Okay. So you're on Henley at plus 360 for a top 10, as am I. What other non-outrights are you on this week?
Sam Burns to finish top 20 at plus 180. We know he's got the Bermuda Burns nickname, but he's just a great putter overall. 90th percentile since the start of last season from within 15 feet on tour. 87th percentile from beyond 15 feet, which you want the inside 15 feet to be great. Being great outside of 15 feet is not a negative. It's just a potential sign of regression, which means he makes a lot of putts, and the irons are still good. He's 17th in this field over the last 50 rounds. Driver is not great, but a lot of that has to do with more with the accuracy than the distance. He's 13th in distance in that sample. So he's going to need to avoid, errant tee shots, getting into penalty situations, but everything's good in terms of like the checklist for Sam Burns. And when he's played Bay Hill, he's he's gained distance, and he's gained strokes putting. So I will take that for a top 20 for Sam Burns at plus 180.
Yeah, I think that Burns is an interesting name. I've been on him a bit recently for the reasons that you mentioned. If you look at like the when numbers stabilize numbers, like that perspective. So more recent sample for the ball striking numbers, longer sample for the short game. Burns looks a lot better there. So it does seem like things are trending the right direction for him. So you've got him top 20 at plus 180, and then Russell Henley top 10 plus 360. In addition to the Henley top 10, I got a pair of top 20s I like. First one being Taylor Pendrith, who is plus 175. I know, plus 170. Hey, someone else on Pendrith, not just me. Shocker that I'm on Pendrith, but again, the putter's got to come around eventually. I hope / I think. Come on, man. Like, let's stop this. Let's stop this charade. He has now lost a full stroke per round in 2 straight events. He's also struggling around the green, but those numbers can be fluky in a small sample. He is a guy who excels both with distance and accuracy, which is good for this course. As you mentioned, with all the water out there, distance does matter too. He missed the cut here in 2023. He has struggled putting at this course. Maybe that's not a great thing given the way the putters looked recently, but I think we know that long-term Taylor Pendrith is a good putter. So I'm just going to keep banging my head against this shed and saying, all right, buddy, this is the week. Let's have the putter hit. And if he does, he's got upside for sure. Top 20 plus 170. I did take him outright too. So he's also on this list of guys there. But I think that the top 20 at plus 175 makes sense. Am I going insane? Is Taylor Pendrith a bad putter now? What is going on here?
I mean, it's got to turn around eventually.
I hope
with his long-term splits, unless he just is kind of going through it. But
yeah,
again, the math really says he's good, and he's such a consistent ball striker. Like based on the literal math of how good he is and the dispersion numbers for him, not per shot dispersion tracking, but his mathematical, heat map is very tight when it comes to the ball striking. So I think it's just another one of those spots where it's a fatigue situation where if you've liked Taylor Pendrith, realistically, not a whole lot changed. So I'm not going to talk you out of Pendrith this week by any means.
The other non-outright that I had, the final one for today, is Aaron Rye to finish top 20. He is 2-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook. I think Rye in general is kind of interesting for this week. Irons for him looked really good at the Mexico Open. Obviously didn't get the job done there, but ball's been gaining a bit off the tee recently too. As you've discussed since last summer, basically, Rye is a good putter. His inside 15 numbers are solid, and that's starting to show. You were predicting regression back then. That's finally hitting for Aaron Rye, where the numbers have been pretty solid recently. Not the highest upside guy, which is why I don't really want to go beyond the top 20, but he has finished top 20 in 12 of the past 25 events. So he's been here pretty consistently, and you don't need to go nuts in a 72 golfer field to finish on the side of the top 20, even when it is a tougher field. So 2-1 for me, Aaron Rye makes sense. I got Aaron Rye top 20 at 2-1. Got Taylor Pendrith top 20 at plus 170. Russell Henley top 10 plus 360. And then Brandon had Henley top 10 plus 360. And Sam Burns top 20 at plus 180. Let's transition now to talks and DFS for this weekend, because this is a very difficult discussion. I'm going to need to have you talk me through it, because I think there are a lot of ways you could play things this week. You could fork over the money for Scheffler. If you told me, actually, I don't want to do that this week, I think it's better to dip down, I would hear that argument as well. So how are you viewing the top end of the field from a DFS perspective for this week?
Yeah, it's difficult, but I think you just have to take stands, and you have to ask yourself each lineup what you're in. Like, don't fill out a lineup and just say, I like these 6 names, and I'll throw in a complete, I was hate saying like punt play, but someone in the 7,000 range to make a lineup work so that you can get Scotty and Rory. Now, if Scotty and Rory kind of run away with this and one of them wins and it's like, oh, they were the ones making the birdies, I get it. The probability of that happening is pretty low. And so you're kind of handcuffing yourself with the finishing position numbers in terms of fantasy points with what you're going to get with a lineup like that. So for me, what I prefer is ranking these names to see who I'm most afraid of, honestly.
Okay. Interesting.
Which is it does start with Scotty and figuring out ways to get Scotty.
Yeah.
Then you have to ask that question of how far ahead is Rory of everybody else not named Scotty? And I think that he's kind of pretty far ahead in a sense. For the first time in a while, I prefer Rory to Xander straight up.
Mm-hmm.
I may not have an extra 500 to get there, so I'm not going to blow everything up just to get to Rory. But if I'm bumping down, I kind of want to prioritize Rory. The reason that I'm talking about this so much is we went over the course form. We went over the recent form. These two guys stand out. I'm not going to bet them, but boy, do I like them this week. And I think it's easier, even though there's some constrictions with whenever you plug them into a lineup, playing them in DFS is a lot easier, in my opinion, than justifying them for an outright.
Do you have a preference between Scotty and Rory? It sounds like you prefer Scotty. Is that correct?
Scotty for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again,
Scotty too. Yeah.
It's like 1.4 shots per round per event.
Yeah.
Of a difference that's worth 600 to me.
Yeah.
So
I get that. I am also in the same boat where I think that Scheffler is the better option between the two. I do think there is some credence to dipping down a bit lower and skipping over both these guys, skipping over Xander as well. I don't mind any of them. But I think that, like, we tinkered with this a bit before. I mentioned before, I think that Morikawa is undersized at 11.4, and I think Justin Thomas is undersized at 10.9. I think that I could just stack value at a certain point because, to me, Scotty and Rory are properly salaried. And, like, when you're 13-2 and properly salaried, that means you should probably be in the lineup because that's worth a lot. If you're 12-6 and properly salaried, you should probably be in the lineup. But in this specific event, where I adore that mid-range, the guys in the upper mid-9 range, I actually think that, like, let's say I have 3 single entry lineups. I'll have Scotty in at least one, minimum one, potentially 2. I will have one of those 3 lineups, though, start off Morikawa, Justin Thomas, out of the idea of a bit more balanced. I think both those guys have win juice. It's not 23% like Rory. It's not, or like Scotty. It's not 11% or 12% like Rory, but it's still like, I can see it happening. 1 out of 3 single entry lineups, I'm okay with that. If I had 1 single entry lineup, I'm going to put Scotty or Rory in there, I think. But I at least want to make some room in my builds to have differentiated roster construction where I go with like a Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas start in order to get more in that mid range. So yes, if I have 1 single entry lineup, I'm probably going with one of the studs. But if I have 3, I think I'd want to make one of those a bit more balanced.
It is fun to build the lineup with that start you have. Yeah. And I've been warming up to that throughout the show. Again, true priority is Scotty due to the pure win equity that he has to offer.
Correct.
But you're basically expecting him to pretty much finish like top 3. If he's like 7th, even, you kind of start to lose a lot of those finishing position points.
Yeah.
And you put so much pressure on hitting the right value plays. You can realistically build a lineup and get, multiple major winners with JT and Morikawa who are in good form without dipping below 9,000. And that sounds kind of awesome in an event where a couple guys are going to miss the cut and a couple guys are going to finish well outside the conversation. I know you're going to Nick Taylor to plug him in. I understand it, but you don't even have to do that.
You don't have to, but the idea of having 3 guys in that $9,800 range to me is pretty attractive as well. So like if I had 5 single entry lineups, I'd in a second one that's a bit more balanced, have Taylor as like a straight premium value play, then plug in Lowry, Berger, and Henley, and I don't have FOMO at all with those guys because I just get all 3 in the same lineup.
Yeah. So I know we've talked about how there's a lot of ways you can go, but there really is this week, which is the benefit of and the fun of having a stacked field. Because by nature, golfers are going to be undersalaried, and there's a big difference. Not that anybody in a weaker field is going to have a $1,300 salary like Scotty does this week, or multiple names in the 12 range, but the gap, like, you're not, I don't want to air anybody out, but I'll do it for Taylor Pendrith because we like Taylor Pendrith.
Wow.
You're not rostering Taylor Pendrith at 11-4. You're potentially rostering Colin Morikawa at 11-4.
This is just more American aggression at Canada right now, and I will not stand for it. As a Minnesotan, basically Canadian, I will not stand for this slander of our brothers to the north. How dare you? Why pick Pendrith out of all of these people? How rude.
Because
make
we
it
like
Henley.
Okay, Russell Henley then. That's fine.
There we go. Cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I can't really get super jazzed about anybody below JT until you get to the upper 9 range. Like, full respect, Tommy Fleetwood. Tommy Fleetwood's an amazing golfer. Patrick Cantlay is a really good golfer. Will Zalatoris. See you soon, bud. Like, I like a lot of these guys, but like, to me, they're not worth passing up. They're not worth the squeeze. So I think, honestly, of the guys in the upper range, Justin Thomas is the lowest salary guy I'm willing to use. Are you viewing things kind of similarly?
Yeah, you start to see if you sort by salary, you see, JT, Cantlay, Fleetwood, all 30-1 or shorter. Sungjae 39, and then you get into like the 50 range right away. And that's such a big drop off to me. I do like Sam Burns, as I mentioned, from an outright standpoint, or also, from a finishing position standpoint, but the salary is a little bit high for what I want here. So I'm with you. It's not until we get back into that 9K range that I get a lot of interest again.
Okay, so the 9K range begins with our guy Wyndham Clark. Had a good event here last year. 20 feet now 9-9. In the upper 9 range, who are the guys you're gravitating most towards?
9-9.
9.
It's going to be Henley first. This is hard to rank them because I'm also basing everything off of, not everything off of projection, but I would rather have Daniel Berger at his peak than Shane Lowry sort of at his peak.
Sure.
And I think Berger is kind of back there. So I'm finding myself, as I'm tinkering around here, going to Daniel Berger next. But a lot of names in this range jump out, and it gives more and more credence to a less top-heavy build to get back here. Hardest part is figuring out those names, but I do feel like where I'm going to walk away from the show and as I'm entering lineups, Henley first, Berger second.
Yeah, I have Henley 1 as well. The tough part for me is, do I want to go Lowry at number 2 or do I want to go Berger?
Yeah.
And your pitch for Berger is pretty enticing, given that like we were doing this deep dive last week, and he was a top 5 golfer in Data Golf's rankings at one point. And he's looked kind of like that guy recently. So Berger of late, second at the Phoenix Open, 12th, 25th. Iron's been good. Off the tee play has been good. It's enough where I have to like give it a lot of thought, but I think I will still give Lowry the slightest edge as my number 2 guy in this range. So to me, I'm going to Henley 1 at 97, Lowry 2. But again, if I go with that like Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa build with a value play, I can get to 3 of these guys. And I think that is pretty fun for at least like a build that I want to explore this week.
Yeah, I don't have a strong enough conviction outside of Henley, who's just my preference. So no real issues here going Lowry over Daniel Berger. But everything for me is so objective and mathematical. But right now for Berger, it kind of feels like a little subjectivity needs to be thrown in here.
Okay, I think that makes sense. Let's go down a bit then. Getting below Henley at 97, which other guys are catching your attention for this week?
No real problems with Sepp Straka.
Yeah.
But Taylor Pendrith at 95 does a bit more for me. And I think this is the biggest problem, I think, of trying to get to Scotty is how quickly things feel like.
Where do they fall off for you?
I don't want to besmirch Tom Kim exactly. I don't love him this week, but I think he's just a great overall golfer. So I'd probably say after Tom Kim. So
I
at
think that's where I draw the
9,400,
line too, is after 95.
like I'm probably not going to play Tom Kim, but I have
Yeah.
no real issues with him. His irons are great. The putter for him is really eluding him. So that's kind of a big part of it.
I think so too. I think you could make a strong case for saying the fall off is a 97 because I like Straka and Pendrith. I'll say 95 personally, but I think there's a gap between Henley and those guys.
Yeah. And when we talk about a drop, do you think the drop continues pretty, like, do you get another drop, or do you feel like
there's
low
another
nines
tier drop post Pendrith down to, like, I like Michael Kim. I like Denny McCarthy enough. I could see using Davis Thompson, but I think there's a pretty big drop off. Yes.
Yeah. That's why that getting multiple names in that upper 9 range is really enticing to me this week.
Yep, I agree with you there. So scrolling down to the low 9K range, the first guy who kind of stands out to me down there is Michael Kim. I was very happy that you called him my guy. Usually I'm annoyed and or like offended when you call someone my guy, but I'll take it with Michael Kim. That's fine by me. You mentioned the past 4 events has been really good. It's supported by good ball striking. The putter's been solid, but not an outlier to the point where you expect regression. Of the guys down here, Michael Kim is my favorite. I think by a pretty wide margin. I don't mind Davis Thompson, kind of in hopes that his irons get back to where they were with the summer. That's kind of wish casting a bit. But I think to me, Kim's the one standout down here. What do you think in the lower 9K range?
I can see that. I might prefer, shout out Boston Common, Adam Scott. I never really go away from Adam Scott too much. His irons are so consistently good always. His per round approach numbers have been plus 1.16, 0.72, 0.76, 1.22, 1.83. Stripe said he can gain distance. Lengthy history at this course. So I think I'd probably lean Adam Scott right now.
I was going to ask if you want to do a bet, but I actually think Scott's pretty good. So it might not be an advantageous bet for me. Yeah, I'll pass. I thought about it though. Did think about it at least, but I think that he makes sense for DFS. If I can't talk myself into a head-to-head him versus Michael Kim, I should probably be okay with Scott in DFS too. And I probably should like him more than Davis Thompson, but being realistic.
You can build a lineup where Adam Scott's your lowest salaried golfer based on all the names that we kind of really like, and that feels nice.
Yep, I agree. Okay, let's get to some value plays here. Below 9,000, which golfers are you looking at this week?
The 3 that I'm kind of going to or finding I guess it's 4 that are jumping out a little bit. JJ Spawn at 88, Max Grazerman and Aaron Rye at 87, and I keep doing the Nick Taylor thing as well, but I do think he's sort of a break glass in case of emergency situation. So
break
I'm probably
glass to avoid emergency.
But I'm probably going Spawn, Grazerman, and Rye, potentially ranking them in inverse order, where I go Rye, Grazerman, Spawn, out of preference.
I might go Grazerman first above Rye. I like Rye from a betting perspective. I like Grazerman for DFS. Irons and putter really good. Looks like he's back to the form he showed in the summer and the fall. Distance should play pretty well here. That might be why I lean him versus Rye. His accuracy is also not awful. So I go Grazerman over Rye, but I don't mind Rye. And I think I'd put Spawn third in that list too, personally. But Grazerman's definitely on my list for sure at 87.
Yeah, Grazerman. I mean, they're all, well, Grazerman's the best putter from within 15. So I like that. I would definitely hear that case. And as I talked about with him over recent weeks, his mathematical ceiling is really high. So I should probably put him first. So Grazerman, Rye, Spawn for me.
Okay. Other guy, as mentioned, Nick Taylor. Let's just discuss the reason that I like Nick Taylor at 83 quickly. Irons are just really, really good right now. Putter's been good too. If you look at him just since the new year, he's finished 48th, 1st, 12th, 33rd, 25th, and 9th. That's why he was in the current form section for you. He's not going to gain off the tee. Kind of a bummer for this week, but I can't get everything at 83. So if I'm looking to like make the math a lot easier, whether it be a Scotty lineup or a non-Scotty lineup, Taylor's a primary guy who does that for me. So I like Nick Taylor quite a bit. I did look into Lucas Glover a bit. I don't know, man. I shouldn't get bored of it, of continuing to do it, but like I did look into him. Any Pock Eater interest this week or no?
I don't think I need to this week.
Yeah. Okay. So Nick Taylor's probably the guy we're turning to most if we're looking to like go way down, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. Who are your DFS loves for this week?
Loves. Honestly, at this rate, Morikawa and JT.
Yeah.
They're the most undersalaried golfers.
I agree.
Henley.
Agreed.
Daniel Berger is very close.
Okay.
And then I think Adam Scott.
Okay. I'm going to go with Morikawa and Justin Thomas as well. Then I'll go Henley. Lowry's like a firm like, I would say. I would go Grazerman as a love. Nick Taylor is love due to the way rosters shake out this week. Is that a fair way to phrase it?
Yeah, that's like a conditional love, which I don't like to do.
Okay.
No. I get what you're doing, but
yeah. Okay. All right. Let's finish up here with our win picks for this week. I won the bobble hat by 0.1 points, despite the fact we had a 5v5, which is absurd, I think. So I get to go first, which means I can either pick first and fourth or second and third. I know you have a tier of 3 guys you really like. So I could make it tough and say, okay, pick and make you pick first. But I kind of just like JT most. So I think I'm going to pick first and fourth and take JT at 28-1 as my first win pick for this week.
I already have all this penciled in.
Okay.
The only thing is I don't know where exactly you'll land on your fourth, but I have you for JT. I have me for Xander at 18 and Morikawa at 22.
You knew I'd take first?
I knew you were going to pick first and take JT. The only thing is I haven't heard enough of a conviction from you anywhere else to sort of say this is who you would pick to go along with JT.
So I mentioned the group of 4, the guys I bet. I bet Xander. He was 24 when I bet him. So 18, not as appealing. So I'm going to cross him off. And you also took him. So can't do that. JT was 1. Other 2 I did bet were Henley at 50 and Pendrith at 60. I think Henley's a better bet. So I'm going to go Henley at 44 as my other outright for this week. So I got Henley 44, JT at 28. You've got Colin Morikawa 22 and Xander Schauffele 18-1. I think that's pretty fun cards for both of us, honestly, for this week.
Yeah, I was going to put you. Henley was the name if I had to pick one that I thought you would go with. So nice to know. I could have nailed it if I just went for it, but I didn't feel like backspacing. It's a whole thing. So
I'm annoyed at how much you know me. Very upsetting and disturbing. That is all that we have here for today on the Heat Check. Back with you once again next week. We're going to preview the Players. Big money going to be doled out in TPC Sawgrass next week. We'll be here to break it down for you next week. Check that out on the FanDuel Research podcast feed, but also on the brand new FanDuel Golf Betting YouTube page. Go there, subscribe, turn on notifications, leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate those of you watching on YouTube as always. Brandon, if people have questions for you on social media, where can they find you there?
I'm on X at Gdula13, GDULA13, and on Blue Sky at Gdula.
I'm on both X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work in the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your bets and your DFS picks for this week. We'll talk to you once again next week for the Players. This has been the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast.